Welcome back, everyone. My name is Luka, and this is yet another episode of Sabres Chat presented by Built in Buffalo. I believe we're on episode number 7 here. Um, Not going to cover the or bury the lead here. Uh, After what we have seen the past few games, and even you can basically say since the start of March, the hope of playoffs is officially dead, and it sucks. And I'm not going to let this episode kind of force to be positive or anything. I feel like grieving and just being upset about what has all transpired with this team and all of that kind of stuff feels adequate, especially with what we've been seeing lately. And kind of where I want to go from here is just lay out some facts essentially and just everything that seems like has been taking place with this team and around the locker room and why we currently sit where we are. And the place to start, honestly, is just raw numbers and raw statistics and things like that to just kind of paint a broad picture and then bring it in and kind of bring it to where the thumbnail even and the question I say is, team defense question mark. Clearly this team has never heard of it. um, the Sabres have been outscored 28-12 in their past 5 games. They actually do have a win in the past 5 still. They are 1-3-1 in that stretch, 28-12, and yet having a win. You can't win a lot of hockey games. Obviously, they seem to have won one in Toronto. That Toronto game is technically 5 games ago now, so it is in that stretch, but you can't win a lot of games allowing 28 goals in 5 games. That's over 5 goals a game, of course. In their past 4 home games, now remember, in the past 5 games, I just said they allowed 28 goals. In the past 4 home games, they have been outscored 26-8. They, of course, have not won any of those games. They did technically get 1 point in the loss to the Rangers in that stretch, but 0-3-1 in that stretch. Immediately, I know a lot of fans kind of directly go to goaltending, and goaltending is absolutely part of this. It's not been good enough, plain and simple. Everything they've had in the net, between the three-headed monster or three-headed unfortunate monster that they have there with Craig Anderson, UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and Eric Comrie, it's just not good enough performance. There was someone I saw tweeted out. I don't know if it was Joe DiBiase or if it was someone else. So I apologize. That credit cannot be given where it's due. But you have goalies on this team, 3 goalies, where Eric Comrie, of course, gave up all 10 goals against Dallas in that dreadful game. You have UPL, who has allowed 7 goals, I believe now. It's at least once, but I want to say he's now done it twice because I believe he was in net for both Boston games where they put up 7 the entire time. So he has given up 7 goals twice, but don't quote me on that. It's at least once. And then Craig Anderson was well on his way of allowing a lot of goals, and he eventually got the hook after 6 goals allowed. So you have 3 goalies where they have had just a game throughout the season where they have allowed 10, 7, and 6. And the 6 didn't even happen in an entire 60 minutes. Just not good. But with that in mind, you know what? Let me not even stop there, actually. I have one other thing real quick, specifically about UPL. And I want to take this opportunity real quick to talk about UPL because he is someone that I know is a little more polarizing with the fan base. And I know by polarizing, I mean some people have an opinion that they still want him around and he can develop and everything like that. And to those people, I give credit where it's due in the sense of goaltenders and just being a goaltender in the National Hockey League is the position that takes the longest to develop. It is the most difficult to develop. And time is definitely something that you need to give to those goaltenders. But what I would then kind of rebuttal with and come back at you with is the fact that UPL has currently played 44 NHL games. He has played 69 AHL games. Those are both technically professional levels of the sport. Okay. In those 69 AHL games since he has signed with the Sabres, he has an 8.95 save percentage. In the 44 games in the NHL since he has signed with the Sabres, he has an 8.90 save percentage. He has an expected save average that puts him in 80th among 96 qualifying goaltenders in the NHL during that span. 80th. That means in that statistic where that is just simply saves above expected, meaning when you make a save, when you should make a save, and everything is taken into account there, he is 80th. There are 79 goalies in that stretch and in that time frame that qualifies for this that are above him. And that's just, it's not good enough. You've played over 100 professional games in your career, and your average save percentage is not even 90 or 900, obviously, because they do, three numbers after decimal place, but 90%. You don't have a save percentage above 90%. In the NHL and in the professional game as a whole, you need to be above a 9-1. You need to be above 91% to really be viewed as someone that can kind of cut it. And it could take time. He could be a late bloomer, but what you've seen already out of him is not good enough that I feel like you can't just assume and pencil him in already for being part of this roster and being on this team come next season when it starts. I don't think it's outlandish to say that. I don't think it's crazy. Credit to Joe DiBiase on this one. I believe he did tweet this out recently. And I agree 100%. I think it's valid and worth being brought up because there are people that just feel like you need to give him time. And there's already been some time given to him, and he's not even hitting the 90%. Like, he's not getting to the point where you can get reliable goaltending or dependable goaltending from him, except for spurts and small stretches. And that's just not good enough, especially for a team. And I'll get into it later that has expectations beyond just being in the mix moving forward. So UPL is not someone that I would automatically pen or pencil into the roster come next season start. But I wouldn't be surprised, of course, if it goes there. But now, to go away from goaltending here, that, the Sabres being outscored 28-12 in the last 5, 26-8 in their last 4 home games. It's not all goaltending. Team defense and the lead of this episode, team defense, just doesn't exist. It to a point where it almost seems like it's not coached, which it's coached. Like, it would be ridiculous to say that the coaching staff is not coaching this team on how to perform defensive efforts and what to do without the puck on your stick, and when you're pinned in your own zone, or when the other team is transitioning into your zone and they're in the neutral zone at the time trying to enter, and you need to force them to enter in uncomfortable ways, or ways that force them to really step up and make a play in order to retain possession in your zone, and or make their life difficult or as difficult as possible when they are in your zone. And that is far from the case with these Sabres. Like, zone entry, especially, is, of course, the last game that comes to mind is the last game that was played, and that's the Predators game. But there was that point in the second period, so they get back into the game. It seemed like effort was there, and immediately they allow a goal on a quick play off the draw, and it was way too easy. And then shortly after that, there was another goal scored where the individual that was freed up and just kind of walks right into the zone, who eventually scores, it was, again, too easy. This team has no idea what they're doing when the puck is not on their stick. And that's unacceptable. That it should not happen that way. Like I said, they are being coached. Just something needs to change clearly with that, because the game, I mean, and I'll lead into maybe what's also going from this, because it hasn't really been all that entirely. But at the same time, they were winning games, even though UPL was still allowing 3 a game. Now, unfortunately, he's allowing 4, 5, 6 a game, 7 a game at times. and you're just not going to be able to win games like that at all. But you were still allowing, there was UPL had, he was first, second, or third star of the week, or he even might have gotten a month honor. I believe it was a week though, where he had a good result week and a decent enough save percentage, but he averaged 3 goals a game allowed. Like it was 3 games and he allowed 3 goals every game. That's not good. Like, and again, you win those games. He has a decent enough save percentage, and save percentage is really what you grade goaltending on. So if you have a good save percentage, but you're still allowing 3 goals a game, that highlights not goaltending, but team defense. And I keep saying team defense, by the way, because it's not just on those 6 blue line players. The forwards have responsibilities off the puck. The forwards need to do something to make the defensive pair behind them make their lives easier. And they're not doing it, not even remotely. And it's almost like you got to die by the blade of which you were finding success on, but not really. There is a way to play high energy, high press hockey, defensemen jumping in on the rush and stuff while still being defensively responsible. That does exist. You can have that. It just takes awareness from all 5 skaters on the ice on what is happening around them. And that is the thing that is not even remotely coming close to happening now and really hasn't been happening well the entirety of this season. And that right there is something that coaching needs to diagnose, recognize, and do something about moving forward. It's too late this season. This season is not salvageable. This 3-week stretch now at this point has absolutely killed everything about this season. Any hope of playoffs is, of course, as I said right in the beginning, is gone. It's over. There is nothing the Sabres and this coaching staff or anyone can do anything about that now. It is unfortunately done, over, dusted, move on. They do still have 12 games on the season. You can still try to finish on a high note, but there's going to be nothing after those 12 games, unfortunately, and you have to live with that. But this is the time now, and in the offseason, of course, where philosophy change might need to happen. Coaching needs to understand what has been happening throughout the season and what they can do about that, whether that is some roster tinkering, whether that's just how they need to be coaching their everyday with this team. They can clearly score with any team in the National Hockey League. They can keep up with any team around them. It's just they need to do a better job off the puck, understanding play around them, making life a little more difficult for the team they're playing against. And for the love of God, stop giving away breakaways and odd man rushes by the dozen. Every game, it seems like you could probably do a half dozen at least going into a game, 2-on-1s, 1-on-0s, 2-on-0s, whatever it might be. Odd man rushes and breakaways are going to happen against you every game. You could at least write in 6. You could probably pen it in every game, at least 6. And you will probably hit double digits by the game's end, especially in this stretch of games right now. That's unacceptable. It's inexcusable. You cannot allow that as an NHL franchise. That is not something allowed. I would love to know. I don't know where I can go to look up something like that, those stats, unfortunately, but I'd love to know where the Sabres average in odd man rushes and breakaways against compared to the rest of the league. They have to be at the top or the bottom, I guess, technically. And even teams like Arizona, San Jose, Columbus, all these bottom dwellers of the league, they probably are at least 1 to 2 on average under allowed what the Sabres allow per game. It's insanity what we are watching right now with this team. And it's a big, big, big reason why they find themselves currently in the predicament that they do. So beyond team defense, though, and everything like that, the issue of that with this whole season, focusing in on this 3-week stretch or even just recently what's been happening, I feel like as fans, we can absolutely recognize that there's been a change mentally with this team and all the players. This is probably something we should have expected. Expected because once expectations finally are kind of there. And there's a pressure added to these late season games where every game just means more. There's much more on the line now. You're not just in the middle of the season. You're not just kind of going from game to game. Finally, you understand your standings watching, your scoreboard watching. You're paying attention to the rest of the league and where you stand among the rest. And you understand that you are actually in it and you're in this postseason push and things are happening and you're hearing the noise around you. This young, inexperienced team, clearly things are moving too fast for them right now. And all of a sudden, they're gripping their sticks tighter. They're questioning their own decisions. They're doubting their own decisions while play is happening. And the worst thing you could do, anyone that's played hockey at any form of level, any structured hockey, you understand you really can't get caught thinking too much out there. You just need to be comfortable and do what you know you can do. You're not thinking about it, you're just doing it. And this team is clearly overthinking, overanalyzing, questioning, doubting everything they're doing, gripping their stick tight while they try to do anything. And the game is just moving too fast for them and it's just getting out of hand too quick. And they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to get out of it. It's just too much for them. And leading out of that, it was refreshing in a way, frustrating in another way, and just overall, I'm glad we got an answer for it. That the post-game media session, so the post-game press conference with Don Granato, the meetings at the locker with Tage Thompson and others, there was a general consensus or like a common theme to all of these answers from them. And a lot of times with athletes, you just kind of get especially in hockey, it's almost comical at times where you get these same vanilla answers, a bunch of nonsense. None of it means anything. It's just really, just you could pick them out of a hat and it would apply to 20 different questions, what these answers are being thrown at media and everything. But per Brian Koziel, who did a great job. Brian Koziel of WGR, of course, anyone knows them if you follow the Sabres, of course. Did a great job just quoting everything that was said. And among the quotes that Don Granato is on the record of, he just talked about how the team was just pressing. They're pressing too much and they're playing with a ton of anxiety. And that brings it back to the game moving too fast and they're questioning and doubt. They're thinking too much out there. The anxiety has kind of risen among all of them. And that, of course, the thing that we all kind of assumed at this point, and it was just confirmed now, that they're playing with this kind of pressure for the first time and they just clearly cannot handle it. And the thing that I kind of liked from Granato was he added that it's his job to help keep clarity among the locker room throughout all of this and through everything that they feel like they're letting everyone down. And these recent performances are just getting to them one after the next. And they're hearing the noise essentially. And it's Granato's job to kind of guide the team and guide everyone through all of this to make sure that they stay focused and stay understanding of the task at hand, but just what they can do to control themselves, what they can do to stay grounded and keep being successful of what they have found previously. And he hasn't done a good enough job with that. You can tell with what those comments and why he brought those comments out and where he said it's his job to do certain things. He's bringing that up because he clearly recognizes he has not done a good enough job with that. And that's refreshing to hear. On top of that, Tage added that they're trying to lean heavily on Okposo and Anderson primarily because they've been through these late season games with a lot of pressure. And it's good to hear that they're recognizing it, but that highlights something to me that I'm definitely going to want to discuss in possibly next week's episode or a future episode close down the road, where something about this roster was highlighted in that comment by Tage that you're leaning on Oposo. He's your captain. He's a vet. He's been around a long time. He's obviously referring to when he was back on the Islanders and on those teams with John Tavares and all of them. They were making postseason pushes. They made the playoffs. And, Oposo was a big part of that, generally on the wing of Tavares through a lot of those teams. So he has that experience. Craig Anderson, of course, been around the league for a very long time, has had a lot of success, mainly with the Senators, but has had a lot of success everywhere and has been through a lot of postseason runs and pushes at the end of season. They have had that. But when those are the only two names brought up, when those are the only two names that, if you look at the entire roster, really fit the bill of understanding this, because you even have a Zemgus Girgensson, been in the league for a long time, but he's never been in that position. He's been on these Sabres teams year after year that have never been in the conversation of playoffs. And they just don't, there's no one else there that during the game can affect it and help. Anderson's got to focus on his own job. Goalies are a unique breed. They got to focus on their own thing. Honestly, when it comes to leaning on someone in the locker room for all these other younger players, Anderson is not someone that I feel like you really should, or I don't want to say that, because I think that's Ben Anderson's role this whole season. You know, he wasn't going to be a guy that's starting 50 games. He's just too old for that, unfortunately. But so he doesn't need to focus too much on his game, but he still needs to on game days. And then during the game itself, you're not leaning on him during breaks and stuff. Like, he's got to focus on his own stuff. So now you just have one guy. That's your captain, Okposo. And that's a lot for just one guy. And I think Okposo is a great guy to lean on. I think he's a veteran presence. He's a great captain, but you need more guys. There can't just be one. And that is definitely something about this roster. And there's going to be a lot of discussions by season's end and through this offseason out of at least myself. And I'm sure we're going to see it all around, where that is a point of emphasis that needs to change. And there needs to be something else in that dressing room that isn't just Okposo that players can lean on, because Tage is no longer a kid, right? He's a budding superstar. Tuck is now not getting any younger, and he's really in those prime years, and kind of in the front end of it still, luckily, but in those prime years, all these guys are starting to get into those points of their career where you can't throw these away due to development of the rest of the roster. So you need to do something to add a veteran presence, or just more, um, and I'm going to use the term veterans, but I'm not talking about old guys. I'm just players that have been around the league and been through it, and been through playoff pushes, been through the actual playoff runs themselves, has found success in that, so that there are more individuals from on the day to day that this team can lean on moving forward and find themselves in successful uh, outcomes come these games next season, or the year after that, and the year after that, and so on and so forth. So that's a conversation we can have another time. But I thought that comment by Tage, where they're leaning heavily on just those two guys, was kind of noteworthy, due to the fact that it's really only those two guys, when you look at it, that you can have that kind of uh, conversation with, because there's no one else there, unfortunately, that has experienced anything like what they're going through right now. And I don't mean that in the failures. I just mean that playoff push and trying to get to the postseason with all of this pressure on you. So, with everything in mind and everything as it is now, and playoffs, of course, are just pretty much out of reach and just not going to happen. The question just becomes, what can this team do in the remaining 12 games? And I mean, the simple answer really is just get back to the basics. Just get back to finishing, get back to having strong, productive shifts and periods, and eventually games, and try to go on a little bit of a run, or just do what you can, finish as best as you can. And I feel like, this team's not going to make the playoffs. Of course, you're going to have most likely the Islanders and the Panthers right now are hot as hell. The Penguins, right as I'm recording this right now, are up 4-2 on the Avs late in the third. It doesn't look like, they're going to go away anytime soon. Those three teams are really what I look at are going to make the postseason. But if the Sabres can have success late in this year now with these final 12 games, you have 24 points available. Say they get 16 of those points, and they finish above the likes of the Senators, the Red Wings, the Capitals. If they can finish above those teams and finish in, you know, theoretically wild card 4 spot, we'll call it. It's not a real spot, of course. You don't make the playoff being the 4th best in the wild card, or the 4th best of the rest after the Division 3 spots. But if you can finish there, you can at least kind of understand where you are. And I feel like the Sabres are a team that is in a better position than the Senators. Although they have a lot of promise and stuff moving forward as well, that they're not going to go away and they're not going to just fall off a cliff. The Red Wings, who have some good pieces, but I feel like are further off than some others might think they are. And the Capitals, who do feel like they're about to fall off pretty soon, other than Ovi just doing everything he possibly can to break Gretzky's record, goal scoring record. They're going to fall off a bit. You need to finish above them so you can at least have that confidence going into the offseason that you are close and you do stand where you are, and you can build on that moving forward after dealing with the failure that was the end of this season, not making the postseason after having it essentially in your fingertips. It was right there for them. You could smell it. You just couldn't taste it. You could smell it though. And try to build on that come next season. And the next 3 games are interesting. You are home Friday night against the New Jersey Devils, then immediately go to the Island Saturday. It's a 5:00 game to play the Islanders, and then come back home Monday and play the Montreal Canadiens. Between now and next recording, those are going to be interesting games. The Devils and Islanders games, those are games where I might see the Sabres find it difficult to find success and turn things around. I would love to see it, but the Devils and Islanders, of course, kind of play more of a grind you down style. I mean, the Devils can kind of run and gun, but they want to play within a structure. And of course, everything we talked about, especially with team defense and whatnot, the Sabres don't do well against teams that are able to play within a structure and understand first line to fourth line, everyone understands their roles and does their job at a high level. The Islanders, of course, do that. It's like every line does exactly the same thing, and they just grind you down to death and then eventually beat you a few times. And Sorokin back there is just going to not allow a damn thing in his net. If he has any say about it, he's been phenomenal this season. Those are going to be tough games to watch, I imagine. I'm just going to be realistic about it. The Montreal game maybe is where you can finally find that bounce back. They're not, obviously they don't have anything to play for really. No one's tanking. I mean, Arizona, San Jose, the Anaheim, Montreal, Columbus, they keep winning games right now at the end of the season. And it's like Connor Bedard, this unbelievable generational talent that is just clear cut number one and is a franchise defining draft pick. You should be probably, throwing some third periods there to finish in better odds and chances of getting that first overall pick for him. But Montreal is a game where you should hopefully find some success and bounce things around. But overall, I would love to see this team do it quicker and sooner than later. But these last 12 games, all right, this team just needs to go back to doing the little things, refine themselves, get out of their own heads, and just move forward and play as good as they can and try to just get into the, try not to be too down on the standings. Finish on a high note, be as best as you can be by season's end, and understand what needs to happen come this offseason and understand what you need to build on from here this offseason. I wish I could lie and say I was excited for what's coming up, but unfortunately, it's kind of just we've hit one of those points where I'm just upset. I'm not happy with how this season's ending. But next episode and these episodes coming up, I'm going to kind of pull it back a little bit. We'll talk about the games and everything like that. We're going to talk about how the Sabres are looking. Are things still kind of off the rails and just not going well? Did this team figure things out again? What is going on with all of that? I'll discuss those things, but I kind of want to have a more big picture conversations coming up soon. And, talk about, like I mentioned before, what does this dressing room need? What does this roster need come next season? And where could they attack that? Is GM Kevin Adams going to need to do things when it comes to trades? Is there going to be anyone in the free agency pool that he can really look at and stuff like that? It's going to be interesting. We're going to have those kinds of conversations coming up, but unfortunately, this was not exactly a positive one. Sabres in Granado, Matt Ellis behind the bench there. Everyone, come on, let's try to figure things out when it comes to coaching a little bit of team defense. And figure stuff out by season's end, maybe a little bit, and then refocus on how things need to change this offseason leading into next season so we don't have a repeat of this failure. I do think, just to kind of tip my hand a little bit here, I do think roster changes are needed. I don't think it's, 6, 7, 8 changes, but when you really look at it, just to show a little bit here, there are probably 7 forwards on this current roster that I say are pretty much a lock for next season, and 3 defensemen. Maybe 4. I'm not going to get into specifics here, but 3 defensemen for sure. And then no goaltenders, by the way. I'm on no goaltenders. I think everyone can change and things can be had. I don't necessarily mean that means Devin Levi will be starting for, or on this roster come the start of next season. But I don't necessarily, Craig Anderson's going to be gone after this year. He's going to finally retire and enjoy his life with his family and everything. And I wish him all the best with that. But UPL and Eric Comrie, I don't necessarily think that they need to come back, both of them. And there are players that could be had out there that could at least give some sort of improvement to that area. But until we get to those conversations, I will leave it at that. I am Luka, and it is an absolute pleasure to bring you these episodes week in, week out. I look forward to continuing it. And until next time, again, I am Luka. This is Sabres Chat presented by Built in Buffalo. You all have a great rest of your day or evening or morning, depending on when you are watching this. Thanks. Take care.